At any rate, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Terry Ross, and I got involved in the narrow gauge in the late 50s, started riding it in the early 60s, rode it until they pretty well stopped, and by that time a lot of people were saying, oh, it'll never be saved. You know, go away, don't bother me. And Bob Richardson was one of those even. Very few people actually thought it could be saved. And I was vice chairman of the New Mexico Railroad Authority and chairman of the Joint Executive Committee of the Colorado and New Mexico Authorities. So I was doing a lot with it for quite a few years, about 15 years really. This is how it looked when we started. A few little rocks on the road, you know, some impediments here and there, but we did get it cleaned up. That's the Narrows. Really bad shape back then. This is how it looked after we got it at least reasonably cleaned up. That's another spot with a lot of rocks and sand. We spent a lot of hours trying to get things to the point where we could just take an engine over it. And you can see a lot of difference between the track today and the track then. Of course, we told everybody it was in great shape. That's how we got it bought. There's a crew working on it. I don't know, let's see. Is that Pizell in there? I don't know, it looks like maybe your hat, but there's a little kink, one place we had to straighten out. And there's Herman Barkman on the tamper there. I just learned that Herman passed away recently. And who else we got there? Ernie, he's in the middle. Who's that, Al Stevenson? And we sometimes would take food up with us, have a little picnic, because we'd stay up all day trying to get things fixed. You can see the track was a little weedy, a few problems here and there. And we finally hired a front-end loader to clear out one area. Where is this, Ernie? It's over by Phantom Curve, isn't it, somewhere? Now this is when we came up before we bought the railroad. This was up at Cumbres Pass. We broke the lock, got in and stole the speeder. That's John Pritchard. He took it down to his home in Los Alamos, fixed it all up so we had something to run. And while we were coming down the hill with it, who should come up but the foreman for the Rio Grande. He hollered at us, we just kept it on going. There's the speeder that we stole, a little bit painted up. One of Ernie's cats on the front. I think you lettered it, didn't you, Ernie? But you can see even a rock tunnel, there were rocks, we had to clear a lot of stuff out of there. And this was interesting here. The highway department had cut a whole bunch of, I think there were 13 cuts in it to put culverts through. And we started putting the rail back, and as you can see, the rail just stayed up in the air. It was too long. So some of the crew went back down to Albuquerque and talked to the Santa Fe. And they said, well, just jack it up, let it fall down. 6 inches disappears someplace. I don't know where it went, but it's gone. There's one of the crews that we had working up there. And that was the first train that came out that the Rio Grande pushed out at Antonito. Number of engines and cars. We put 2 ballast cars up front just in case something derailed. I'd rather have those than the engine. And the Rio Grande thought for sure we'd never get the train out of there. They came back, what, 3 days later, Ernie?
This is September 2nd?
Yeah. And we had already taken all the cars up the hill, and they were absolutely shocked they could bring the second portion of our cars out. We bought 9 engines and about 140 cars. That's Ernie's map. I think a lot of you have seen it. It just gives you a general idea of the whole railroad. A little twisty job there.
Is it copyrighted?
Yeah, you betcha. And one thing we had to learn is, what do you do and how do you oil these things? What do you do for grease? What do you take care of them? And we were rather shocked in Antonito. No, it was actually in Chama here. Conoco Oil House was still here. And we needed some grease for the locomotive. And lo and behold, in the corner of the oil house was a whole box of this stuff. This is an old one, of course, with the San Juan, but it illustrates all the sheep that used to be in this area. I imagine Eddie Vigil remembers those. And this is one of the early trains leaving out of Antonito.
That's the first excursion, the governor's train,
yeah.
October 4th.
And up at Cumbres Pass, when we brought the first train over, naturally it snowed at night. But we got through that and started down the hill. Along the way, we spread some of the ballast in the worst spots. And here we are in the Narrows. We had to move more rock than we thought because the engines are bigger than we thought. There were a lot of touristas up above taking pictures and watching what we were doing. Ben Greathouse, a GNR GW engineer, was running it down the hill for us. The rest of us were a little leery going down a 4% grade. Meanwhile, over in Antonito, a fellow had given us the land that's at Antonito, just outright, which is a real deal right there on that corner. And then a bunch of the DNRGW people who do normally track work came over. They stole enough ties, rails, etc., to build us at least a passing siding to start with, and a little later a Y. Before that, we couldn't even go across the road there. And that's the first car that we got built, primarily to show everybody that it was possible to get some way to handle passengers. A lot of the legislatures were very leery that there was no way to haul a passenger on the train. But they did a great job with it, and we took a lot of pictures, showed it to the legislators, and got a few more bucks out of them. And there's Ernie with his stencil. First thing he's got to do is put Cumbres and Toltec on everything he could find. There's the commission meeting where Colorado and New Mexico got together to try and iron out all the details of actually buying the railroad. Most of the people there at the tables you see are people that were appointed to the railroad authorities by the governors. The one at this end, the nearest one, you see the back of, was Bob Keller, who eventually wound up running the train the first, 10 years, Ernie? And I'm way down at the other end with Clarence Quinlan out of Colorado, who was very responsible for getting Colorado to buy it. And here's Bruce King signing the agreement with Scenic Railways. Bob Keller's on the right. Dave Cargo, of course, is on the left. Myself, and then Bruce King signing it. And here's the first real crew that was put together for Scenic Railways.
Yeah, this is 1971.
Yep.
I see Mike Mitchell, Rich Braden.
Sid McKinney's the engineer. And there's the station, the way it looked not long after we bought it. You can see it, even the boards aren't off all the windows yet. And it was green, white, and dirty. Quite a difference from now. And then we got a paint job. Things started looking up. Sid McKinney as engineer, Ben Greathouse is the lower one. Sid was an interesting guy. He came up from Amarillo, Texas, drove through Chama, saw a steam engine and said, I got to go down and look at this. We said, you're an engineer with the Natchez and Topeka and Santa Fe? He said, yes. Next thing I knew, we ran up, his wife got a motel. He stayed here for several months running the train for us, for free. A real character. He brought a friend with him who was an absolute drunk, but he got a lot of work on him because he kept a bottle of wine handy all the time. There's Ben cleaning the top, and I don't know who that is, taking care of the engine. That was one of Scenic's setup shots.
Looks strangely like one of my pictures.
Probably is.
483 and 484. I
Yeah.
think I have one just like it.
Yeah, it's probably yours. Here comes Sid out to get the engine. That's one of my favorite shots for color. That was when the Rio Grande actually had it.
It would be, looks like May 1968.
Probably, right in there somewhere.
Okay, 28 at the tank. Yeah, it had to be May 68.
That was the winter of 70. Nothing moved, and it just sat here during that time. But we had all the equipment over here. But we did leave some of it up on the hill. We couldn't get everything down. There's Mr. Bowler Hat. I'm sure a lot of you know him.
Yeah.
And there it is in all its glory for the movie. There it is on our trip up the hill. Still had the gaudy paint on it, along with Ernie's stencils. Oh, that was, Scenic took that down somewhere in the late 70s, I think. And there's our favorite trestle.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the National Park Service train.
Right.
I think this is one of your pictures, isn't it, Ernie?
November 24th, 1968.
Yep. That was a real battle because the Rio Grande swore up and down they would never run another train. I finally convinced them and went up and made an agreement with them, and we got the train run. Is that Virgil? Looks like Virgil Buckout.
I'm not sure. I don't think it's Verge.
Yeah? I don't know.
It's at Cresco.
Yep. There's the profile. I don't know whether, you know it goes up and down, but you don't really appreciate it till you see it visually. That was one of the early Scenic trains. They copied our boxcar essentially, but they changed the seating arrangement a little. And there's always cows on the track. That was the same early train. You notice the track still is not in the greatest shape. And what I used these slides for initially, I took them around to Kiwanis clubs and all kinds of different organizations to bolster the concept of the railroad. And so a lot of people didn't object. In fact, many of them wrote into the newspapers wanting to save it. Always the onlookers, of course. That's what we had in Antonito. Could not cross the 285 highway. So we brought the fire engine out and it filled us with water. Antonito provided a coal loader, a front-end loader, and without them we never would have been able to get out of there. And we had to back that engine down from lava. We had no turning facilities. There's 463 arriving. That's the equipment we initially left over at Antonito. Clarence Quinlan wanted something there so that at least Antonito could say they had something that belonged to the railroad. And that was the Antonito tank. You'll see why I mentioned this a little bit later here. There they are building the track in Antonito, and Ken Pruitt designed the little station there, and that was mostly built with some volunteer money and volunteers. I don't know if you know that the little station was the original one that's now used as an office by the commission. That was the first real train into Antonito, and they met us there with a great gala, including a mariachi band. That's Bob Keller. We had a lot of differences with scenic railways, and Bob Keller in particular, but I always look at it that if he wasn't here with these backers and the money, we might not have had the railroad. Okay, Ernie, I'll let you name all these.
25th anniversary, or is this the 20th? 1990? Maybe it is.
Yeah, go ahead and name them all.
That's me on the left, and then Alan Stevenson, Virgil Bachhaus, Mavis Bachhaus, Eddie Vigil, and Terry.
Station's still green in this one. This was actually during the DNRGW era. They left one of the snowplows here because they might just use it. You never know. That was the Park Service train up on Cumbres Pass. In order to promote the railroad, the National Park Service had shown some interest in it. But the Rio Grande just said, go away, don't bother me, we're not going to run any trains, period. I finally got the National Park Service. The Southwestern region was headquartered in Santa Fe, and I got the director there to write a letter to the Rio Grande requesting a trip so that they could explore it and see if they might make it into some sort of national monument or something. Well, the Rio Grande wrote back and said, never mind, we don't pay any attention to your letter. So I again went over to the Park Service. This time we wanted to go to the head of the Park Service. He said he didn't want to sign a letter unless it went through Washington. So Art White, who was the associate director, was a friend of mine. And I asked Art, well, can we figure out some way to do this? Art was in the habit of writing letters for Kowski, who was the director, and having him sign them. This was a common occurrence. So White wrote some letters, wrote the letter, took it into Kowski along with a half a dozen others, didn't show him anything except the signature lines. Kowski signed the letters, we sent it up to the railroad. After that, I went and visited Ernie Porter, their general solicitor, and we got the trip. We paid the whole sum of $1,000 for the trip. That's looking towards Cumbres Pass from Garcia Lake that's up there. That's the Park Service train again. That was a snowplow run that was done in, when was that, Ernie? Late 70s?
This should be February 1974. Rotary OM's first operation.
That's one of the early passenger trains the Rio Grande would run. I think that was about 62. You notice there's no cabins down there. You can see the track was in excellent condition, as we advertised.
Wow.
The Governor's Special, Ernie? Is that what that was? Or is that the one we did for the press? We did one for the press, too.
This is the Governor's Special, October 4th, 1970.
Go ahead and name them all.
Go ahead. Troy Newcomb is right on the left edge, and John Pritchard in his traditional hunter's orange cap. Then Benny Greathouse and Bill Holt. And with the green cap is Virgil Bachhaus, and then Alan Stevenson, dressed up like a conductor. Then Dick Glass, and then there's me above Dick Glass holding the flagpole, and then Dave Wood, and standing on the ground is Sam Bass. Above Sam Bass, up in the upper right-hand corner, is Skip Powers. And then at the very top of the picture with the Colorado flag is John Ross.
And I think that's Mr. Prizell, isn't it? I always enjoyed the night that Dan spent out here when the engine wouldn't run. He spent the night out by the same area in that MW02. That's the picture that hung over Ernie Porter's desk in Denver, Colorado for a number of years, coming out of the tunnel. And now we're getting down towards the Antonito side. And we left some of the equipment up at Toltec Scenic. This was passing it up there.
The Whiplash Bighorn.
Always the photographers around.
I'll be darned, there's Russ Berry in his 10-gallon hat.
And at one point, the New Mexico Geological Society made a contribution to us. Part of the deal was that we would take them up on the railroad with a speeder so they could look at and examine some rocks along the line. This was one of the trips we made. There's a dead engine up near lava, bringing some of the equipment up the hill. This is one of the early mobs. One of the dead engines we left up at Sublet. You can see the train still had its lovely paint scheme. Now this is the lava tank when we were using it. And within about, maybe 6 weeks of when we bought it, the lava tank changed. Somebody left a cigarette on top, some photographer, and pretty well burned it out. Now if you look carefully, down towards the bottom, just to the right of the middle is the pump house for lava. A little hard to see, but this is how it looked when it was in good shape. And the reason I showed you that tank from Antonito is because this tank is mostly the Antonito tank. Took it apart, moved it up here, and rebuilt it. That's often, if we came down head first from lava, then we couldn't turn the train around, so we just backed it up the hill with the equipment.
That's all?
That's it.
Just a couple of oldies before I get to Cumbres and Toltec. Bondad tank after the railroad is abandoned. 1969. There's Terry inspecting the track at Carbon Junction. I think he's looking for switch locks, I'm not sure. The railroad had to be physically separated of the Durango and Silverton, or the Silverton branch had to be separated from the rest of the railroad physically. So they pulled 3 lengths of rail on both sides. So the rest of the railroad all the way to Antonito would be abandoned. Rocks are falling down on the track at Durango, hauling rails away. The coal tipple has been taken away at Durango. The MW02 was on the siding at Oxford, Colorado. Shows it in its original paint, protected by a guard dog. You can see here that the rails have been pulled on the Antonito side also. So it can be physically abandoned. Milepost 281, just west of Antonito. Okay, just a few shots of what was remaining at Alamosa. There was a gigantic shop facility and roundhouse facility they had there. That's the way it looked in 1970 in November. Okay, this is the machine shop at Alamosa. .484 at Alamosa, 1969. and the turntable pit at Alamosa and Blanca Peak, 484 again. The roundhouse was originally probably 18 stalls or so, and then they at first tore down, as you can see here, 5 or 6 stalls in the middle, leaving the roundhouse in 2 sections. That's the new section there in the background, and some standard gauge hopper cars. Today that is a Y for the San Luis and Rio Grande. The roundhouse is long gone now. Standard gauge hoppers at Alamosa. 491 is still there, and a couple of tenders. 499. The water tank can be seen in the background on the left side, and the silver sand tower on the kind of the right side of the picture. That silver sand tower is still there today. That's one of the last structures still standing in the Alamosa yard. Everything else is gone. Locomotives that were not purchased by Terry Ross and Company. 491, 480. Yeah, 480 went to the Durango and Silverton. 491 went to the Royal Gorge, I believe. No, actually 491 went to the Colorado Railroad Museum with its tender. GP7 5110 switching on the Y at Alamosa. The dropping ballast actually. So that means that Y is in the process of being constructed right around the east side of the old roundhouse. Looking across where the turntable would be, and the shop building in the distance. There's a little crane used for picking up rail. Must have been used for scrapping. Nice view of the Alamosa water tank. A friend of mine had taken pictures of that tank when they pulled it down. It was in September, I believe, 71 or 72. He just hooked a chain to the top of it and pulled it over. It ended up to be a bunch of wooden splinters. It was really sad. Here you can see the newer section of the roundhouse in a gap of maybe 5 stalls, and then the old section of the roundhouse. And the hoist house is there on the right side of the picture. That's where they would pick the locomotives up to be placed on dollies and take them into the shop and work on them. 499 is the first engine there, closest to the camera. There you can see the hoist house, the turntable, the yard office, and in the distance is the actual shop building. And there was a transfer table that went back and forth left and right to move the locomotives into whatever bay where they were going to be worked on. There you can see the transfer table, the shop facility, the building on the left side of the picture, and there's the old section of the roundhouse and the hoist house on the right side. There's that coal loader and 490's cab, as a matter of fact, on its side over there on the left side of the picture. 490 had been scrapped in 1966. West side of the Alamosa shop building. Out of the photo to the right would be the car shop. And quite often back in the good old days in the 30s and 40s, these side tracks here, yard tracks, would just be filled with cars which were worked on in the car shop, paint shop and littering. That's the way it looked in 1970 in November. South end of the Alamosa shop. Quite a facility. General view of the whole thing. Tree rail track. Nothing but a vacant lot now. One time after I'd taken this, like next year, I believe, the whole facility was just a pile of bricks, reduced to brick. People were coming in and buying those bricks to be used elsewhere. Still some cars waiting, no more because they're shut down, but this is where they worked on the cars in the car shop. Car shop would be off the picture to the left. Alamosa on November 27, 1970. This is the Chama Depot. This is May 1970. The depot all boarded up. We did a reconnaissance hike along the DNR-GW all the way from Los Pinos to Sublette. That was quite a hike. You'll see some duplicate slides. Your that Terry showed in his slideshow. This is the cut just west of Osier. And you remember this slide from Terry? This is the Toltec section house. There's a really waterlogged piece of track there, and it causes the rails to sag. Calico Cut is just a few feet away from that previous picture, Toltec section house. Okay, that's the damage that the highway boulders have done to the track. The boulders have been moved away, and you can see the kinks in the rail. The highway department later came along with retaining walls when they were forced to put in retaining walls. The highway actually was designed, I believe, too close to the track. They assumed the track would be abandoned, but it wasn't. Okay, this is the way you haul ties up to the work site. This is my 1958 Ford, my first car after getting out of high school, ex-telephone car. There were 10 sections of track removed by the DNRGW for replacement of culverts resulting from the new highway. And the DNRGW sold this track to the states, and then we were responsible for putting the rails and ties back at these 10 locations. So Jack Swearingen is on the left side of the picture surveying one of our first repairs. Here's our group. I think you'll see Peter Barkman here in a second. Yeah, here. Where's he? That's Peter Barkman. There's yours truly, Terry Ross, Herman Barkman, Alan Stevenson, Peter Barkman, David Ross, Terry's son, George Swain, Jack Swearingen, and the hunk. And the first speeder, of course, John Pritchard in the cowboy hat. Yeah, I'm not sure about the other people. Oh, David Ross, the little boy. Okay, we're on a speeder trip, and there's David Ross in the foreground, Terry's son. Looks like we're westbound toward Tanglefoot. Okay, this is for Dan Feisel. There's his Dodge pickup loading a speeder at Sublette. Okay, this is repairing another piece of broken track up right at the grade crossing on the new highway. And you can see Clay Bear, Alan Stevenson, Terry Ross, Mike Carr, Woody Wilson. And these two people were from Los Alamos. I'm not sure. That could be Tom Butterworth. Oh, and I think Sid McKinney. You just barely see his backside there. Mike Carr had brought his own private speeder, this homemade speeder, all the way from Chicago. And that turned out to be a very successful speeder, as I recall. Now this is this is the speeder here. We're unloading it from his van. Yeah, that's it. Pete getting ready to get started. And Alan Stevenson looking on. Main line through the Rockies. Through the weeds, not around them. And I think I disagree with what Terry says. What we got was a dilapidated railroad, but we weren't supposed to say that. I remember riding up to Chama with Clay Bear in his Packard hearse at night, and sometimes the headlights would go out. We'd be driving along the highway up to Chama and no headlights, and he'd have to reach under the dash and wiggle a switch, and the headlights would come back on. Needless to say, I was a nervous wreck by the time I got to Chama. Open for business. Getting a speeder ready in Chama for a reconnaissance trip. Alan Stevenson, I believe Terry Ross is there also. We're looks like we're westbound somewhere near Sublette. You can still see this on the oil house today. I looked at it today. Clay Bear decided he wanted to stencil the name on the side of the oil house to make sure it was Cumbres and Toltec. And if you look today, you can still see the C, and it says by Clay Bear. You can still see that today. I believe this is the chief mechanical's office now. Okay, now we're going to start September 1st, 1970. And the DNRGW is delivering the first of 3 segments of Cumbres and Toltec equipment from Alamosa to Antonito. And this is at Romeo. 483, 492, and behind it 484 you'll see in a second. 484, excuse me. Two cabooses. The narrow gauge 0503, which is now beautifully restored, with a standard narrow gauge idler flat and a standard gauge caboose. Arriving in Antonito, the diesel locomotive 5104 and the idler flat behind it will go around behind the train and shove the train back onto the Cumbres and Toltec track. And of course the rails had to be replaced that were taken out. The segments of rails removed because of abandonment. There's yours truly lettering the 483 on September 2nd. These were taken by Los Alamos National Labs photographer Bill Jack Rogers. Okay, under steam, early in the morning on September 2nd, ready to head up the track. We couldn't decide how much of the train the 483 could pull, and we decided to cut it behind the 492. Yeah, these are all my photos. Very early in the morning at Antonito on September 2nd, Cumbres and Toltec has its first engine under steam. From the 492 looking forward to the west, you can see the Antonito Fire Department and lots of vehicles from local residents offering help to get the narrow gauge back underway. Well, it wasn't very far west of Antonito where the 483 started slipping, and we had to start dropping part of the train here and part of the train there. Just ahead of the 492, we cut the train, and I got left behind while Terry and the crew, I guess, went on up to Lava to turn around and come back. Yeah, they left me here with the 492 plus about 8 cars. And shortly 483 returned, and having crushed some of the weeds on the rails, it had better traction, and away we went. Out of sand, yeah. Well, I think that's engineer Art Pugh on top of the locomotive looking at the empty sand dome. This is very near Lava, near Ferguson's Trestle, the 483 and 492, making progress westbound. On the first day of operation, September 2nd, 1970, you see Terry in the foreground, and looking back at the remainder of the train as we head toward Lava. About to enter New Mexico, to go from New Mexico back into Colorado as we get close to Lava, and set out the 492 there. This is the end of operations for the first day of September 2nd, and the worn out crew was anxious to go back to Antonito and tie up. You can see Alan Stevenson there. Yeah, there's the worn out crew. Early day volunteers on the Cumbres and Toltec. This is the second day of operations. We're now taking the 484 up the hill and see how far we get. You can see there's Terry again up on the top. Ken Pruitt, Penny Green, Ken Green. And we're slipping again. 484 got left behind. 483 continued on up to Bighorn, set some more cars off. It was a really leapfrog operation for the first several days, and came back to pick us up as we head off into the sunset. September 3rd. That's a slide like Terry has. I guess I gave Terry quite a few of my slides. I didn't realize that. No wonder there's so many gaps. From Lava Tank, 483 now has like a 20-car train. It's really getting better traction with lots of sand, and the weeds all pretty much gone by now. At Sublette, a couple of gonds were placed in front of the train so we can drop ballast at that bad section of track at Toltec Section House. Calico Cut. Just like Terry's slide. That's Terry in the middle of the track with his aluminum hard hat. To the right of him is Ken Pruitt. Terry and Ken. Not so much trouble with rust. I think it was more weeds and lack of sand. Ballast cars were supplied by the DNRGW already loaded with ballast, as I recall. And DNRG usually uses scoria, which is volcanic and reddish, but I see that the ballast on these cars is whitish. It must be rocks. Some of it's already been dumped on the track. And of course, September 5th, again, a duplicate of Terry's picture. The night before, the volunteers had come into Chama very late at night, early in the morning, and we were really tired. And the next day it started snowing, so we decided to tie up the train, take the day off, head down to Chama and come back. So I believe this is September, I think this is the 6th, when the train is getting ready to make its trip down the hill into Chama. At this very same day, the Silverton train had washed out. The track had washed out between Durango and Silverton. So here was the Cumbres Toltec up and running, and the Silverton branch was down. I believe that's Alan Stevens himself there, of the white hard hat on the pilot. And Alan Stevenson on the end of the gon, waving signals. The snow shed's still intact.
Well, the section now sure looks rough in that view.
That's a famous picture in the Narrows. Eddie Martinez, first paid employee, and Penny Green, Ken Green, and Virgil Bachhaus. Alan Stevenson. Proceeding on down and getting close to Chama, we were all getting kind of excited that we'd be making our first entry, but we had to stop and replace a rail. So I think Russ Sperry and was it Alan Stevens went into Chama. There's Ken Green and Terry Ross again. Just about got the rail replaced, but by the time we got into Chama, it was dark, and I couldn't take any pictures. And I guess there was a barbecue dinner planned later that night, but most of the volunteers on the train were just too tired, so we hung it up and hit the sack. See, the sun is just about ready to set. Okay, the next day, September 7th, and the Cumbres Toltec has its first steam engine in in Chama, excuse me. This is a good slide for getting the correct colors for tomorrow on the 487/483. September 7th, 1970, we're going to put the locomotive away in the engine house, the two-stall engine house, which is the way it was then. And I believe it killed the fire on the locomotive for a week until the volunteers come back the following weekend. Another group photo. Okay, now we're moving on, I believe, to September 13th, when the train is heading up Cumbres with its typical consist. We needed a tool car to carry all the tools, and also the caboose. So this got to be a regular train. The locomotive had to require these two cars wherever it went. Topping off the water tank at Cumbres as we head toward Antonito. As we head further east to Los Pinos tank, and it's a pastoral setting, a nice peaceful setting. The train heads on to Antonito. Little train, big scenery, and the upper reaches of the Los Pinos River. Okay, we're heading back out of Antonito, I believe on the 14th, after picking up some more equipment. The headlight's not on though. Now we're at Bighorn and setting off, picking up some more equipment, and then proceeding west from Bighorn. Caboose in front of the engine. some interesting consists on those operations. Engine not necessarily running forward, sometimes backwards. I think we're dropping off the 492. We had moved it all the way from Lava to Bighorn, so it got a little bit further west. 84 was already there from the previous weekend. Okay, we had quite a few cars to pick up, I believe, at Bighorn, and this was on one of the longest trains to operate on the CNTS in September, October 1970. There you can see this is from the engine looking back at the caboose. We got like 35 cars, and I'm not sure that this has ever been matched. It was a really long train, and then 483 did just fine. The track was in good shape, the sanders were in good shape, and taking water at Sublette. John Olberg is kneeling. Chuck Wirt, a friend of mine, with a checkered shirt, acting like a fireman. And Richard Braden is down there on the ground. Mud tunnel. See, you're looking back on the train, you can't even see the caboose. Pretty impressive train, don't you think?
Wow.
Yeah, September 13th, 1970. Okay, those two ties leaning against rotary OY is what the Rio Grande used to push the OY and its remainder of its work cars onto Cumbres and Toltec tracks, since the rotary snowplow has no coupler on its front end. It's the only way it could be moved. No, rotary, it was not. It was probably almost operable because it didn't take much work in 1975 to get the rotary in operation again. So it was in good shape. Rotary OM was used first. I think you'll see some slides coming up if they're in this tray. Anyway, rotary OM was the first rotor to be fired up and actually used to plow snow. Rotary OY was not used until about probably 1976 or 77. I'm not sure of the dates. OY is a newer rotor. It was built, I believe, in 1923, and OM was built in 1889. It's an old one. So the Rio Grande had finished delivering all of the equipment purchased by the states of Colorado and New Mexico to the Cumbres and Toltec track here at Encinitas. And there's the pile driver, which was transported by the Friends all the way over to Colorado Springs recently and spent like 5 or 6 years over there and was totally restored. I believe okay, there's Jeff Stebbins acting as a fireman as we approach the water tank at Lava. Fireman Stebbins taking water from the lava tank. There's the typical operation with the speeder in front of us, looking for tracks and debris on the track. And if they did find some, they would put a torpedo or flag us down somehow. I believe that's Dick Glass, as a matter of fact, on the right side. And we continue to move west on September 20th, arriving at Bighorn. No, the Bighorn section house by the loop, no, it was gone. It was taken down about 64 or 65, I believe. There's the colorful locomotive on the siding at Bighorn. That siding is no longer in use today. Both the switches have been pulled up. I believe it was some FRA regulation that had to pull those switches up. I wonder if they'll ever be replaced. Here you can see, it's a little difficult, but there you can see right ahead of 482, a flat car with the standard gauge, narrow gauge idler flat loaded on top of it. That idler flat car is currently on display in Encinitas. Okay, here's a detail of the the west leg of the Y at Bighorn. Next to 483, 484 was the best operating locomotive. So I believe it was the intent to get 484 into Chama first. at Bighorn. You can see the east leg of the Y there, and we're getting ready to depart westbound. Sublette. Taking water, as we always do at Sublette. Well, we're picking up some cars at Toltec Siding and to be taken west. Kind of a majestic photo, 484 with the gorge beyond. CNTS has some spectacular scenery. Looking downriver from almost the rock tunnel, you can see on the horizon San Antonio Mountain. And on the left side of the picture, there's the track. The scar on the side of the mountain, the level scar, is the Cumbres Toltec track. High above the Los Pinos River Valley, Toltec Gorge from the west side as we come into Osier. Taking water at the original Osier tank. Departing Osier. Okay, Terry, do you remember what the problem was here? Did we have a hot box on the locomotive?
I don't recall. I don't think I was there that day.
For some reason, we stopped the train and inspecting something. Maybe there's a problem with the speeder. Cascade Creek Trestle, everybody knows where this is. And Los Pinos, that's the original tank at Los Pinos. Still had water in it. The tank that's there now is a replacement, and it has a slightly different configuration than this original Rio Grande tank. Arrival at Cumbres on a brilliant fall afternoon, September 20th, 1970. Setting the retainers and getting ready to go down the hill. Yeah, how do you like that Cadillac? The pickup truck, the white pickup truck, belongs to Ken Pruitt. There he is. Here's the new highway crossing. Look at all the people on top of the caboose. We couldn't do that today. He had all the experience for bringing a train down to 4%. It took a lot of expertise to do that. Yeah, Lobo Lodge previously. Yeah, Lobato Trestle here. Getting close to the new highway construction and all the rubble. Here's the same grade crossing where we replaced the rail. Just north of Chama. Arrival in Chama September 20th. Now have completed 2 trips into Chama. Okay. We're taking a few days off, and I believe this is where my coverage starts of the Chama yards with the 2-stall engine house. And there's that original warehouse over on the right side of the picture, what they call the wool warehouse. It was part of the original, I believe, a 8 or 10-stall engine house.
9, I believe.
9-stall?
Right.
Okay. This is the way the Cumbres and Toltec would look if it had not been saved by Terry Ross. The contractor is loosening the rails, loosening the spikes from the track. This is at Dulce, New Mexico. The depot was right where the tractor is sitting. Been moved away or torched, I'm not sure which. So these pictures are kind of sad. The 111 miles of track between Chama and Durango were dismantled during 1969, 1970, maybe into 1971. And they did not use a train to dismantle the track. They just used a bulldozer to bulldoze a road along the side, and the rails were picked up. West switch at Dulce. Not much of a switch anymore. It's the first bridge east of Dulce. Turned one of the drop bottom guns upside down. Was probably burned on the spot and the metal part salvaged. Still at Dulce. So you can see here how they bulldozed a road along the side of the track so they could get a semi-truck, flatbed truck in, and a crane. The rails were all loaded onto the semi-truck, and they were taken to Bernalillo, New Mexico, just north of Albuquerque, where they were stockpiled and loaded on flat cars on the Santa Fe Railroad and taken on down to the smelter in El Paso. A sad end to the Rio Grande narrow gauge Chama to Durango. Looks like Terry's Volkswagen over there on the side. Were you with me, Terry? This is the governor's train, October 4th, 1970. Both governors, I believe, were invited, but neither one could make it. So this was actually the first excursion, a VIP excursion from Antonito to Cumbres on the Cumbres and Toltec. And the railroad was just a little over a month old. Just west of Bighorn, some guys, some bandits on horseback came running down to the train and held us up. All of the people on the train had to detrain. And luckily it wasn't real. It was just a plot to raise some money for the preservation of the railroad, and I guess the bandits got away with $15. There you see them. That's the Black Hills Gang or something. Who knows? There they all are from Antonito. Near Sublette, the aspens are really pretty in the fall. As a matter of fact, there's even some orange ones right there in the center. Almost every fall you see those orange aspens near Sublette. They're rather unusual. That's a flagpole there on the front of the engine. Hey, on the top of the caboose are Terry and Alan Stevens, as a matter of fact, with that white hard hat. Now we got Alan Stevens' son on the ground looking up in his black conductor's uniform and the pillbox hats. Arrival at Osier. I believe the citizens of Osier had put on a mutton dinner for us, for everybody on the train, so it was quite a celebration. And I believe even some of the outlaws were invited there on the right side of the picture. Hey, there's Dick Glass between the rails right in front of the engine. And we're getting ready for the group photo. Everybody by now has probably seen the plaque at the current plaque at the Chama Depot was the same situation as this. Only here we have it in color, the Kodachrome slide. Unfortunately, whoever took the picture cut off Ken Pruitt there on the right side. You can see half of him. And we're proceeding on further west to Cascade Trestle, where we had a photo run. 137 feet high. That's a pretty impressive trestle.
It's a twin on the way to Lobato, isn't it, as far as construction?
Yes. Yeah, very similar. Probably built at the same time. Okay, guys, it's time for a break.
Terry, you want to do the giveaway stuff?
Sure.
All right, well, some of you guys are taking care of business. The rest of you get your cards out. We're going to turn on some lights over.
Special excursion for the VIPs is at Cumbres, and it's ready to head down the hill to Chama. Arriving in Chama, I had quite a few people on that train. And just some yard photos around Chama. Hasn't changed much from then till today. Switching in the Chama yards. Okay, another return trip toward Antonito was made on the 10th of October. Stopping at Cresco for water. It was a dark, gloomy day around Windy Point. And on the Y at Cumbres. The snow shed still intact. The east leg of the Y had a much shorter snow shed than the west leg. 483 inside the snow shed. I guess we can still recreate this today. Enough of the snow shed is still standing. Looks like you're heading back to Chama, October 10th, 1970. So evidently this was just a turn up to Cumbres and back. October 11th, 1970, a nice, crisp, clear, sunny morning and cold in Chama. 487 is snoozing away. Frost on all the ties. October 17th, 1970, and we're getting ready to make a trip over to Antonio. This would be the last trip to Antonio in 1970 to pick up equipment. Switching in the yards. This is the 452, which is it currently under restoration, the 452? I'm not sure. An old RPO car or baggage car on freight car trucks, because the Rio Grande had taken all of the passenger car trucks over to the Silverton train in Durango. Of course, in the background you see the snow plow for, the wedge plow for engine 488 next to the depot. I believe the movie once again has painted out the Cumbres and Toltec on the tender. Okay, back in Antonito. A beautiful morning, October 17th. Ready to depart. Now there's yours truly trying to make like a fireman at Lava Tank. And there are also on the tender is Sam Bass with his cowboy hat. And I see Terry Ross down on the ground and Bill McKenzie from Colorado Springs. Bighorn Y heading west, picking up equipment. Okay, we're back at Bighorn. The train is on the main line and the engine is on the siding in the hole, picking up, I believe, engine 492. John Pritchard again with his hunter's cap. You can always see that guy everywhere around. All you have to do is look for the orange cap, and there he is. Almost ready to proceed west from Bighorn with the 492 in tow. Okay, here I'm switching to Ektachrome film. Riding on the top of the tender, looking over the cab on the 480 Extra. With it got the white flags. Extra 483 West, arriving at Sublette. Virgil Bachhaus in the foreground is taking a look at 488 in the siding. I believe we're going to pick up 488 and head west with two engines. This is kind of a posed photo. Looks like 492 has just arrived from Alamosa with a short train. You can have a little smoke coming out of the stack. It looked like a live steam engine. .483 and 488 looking out the rear of the caboose at Sublette. Getting the brake line hooked up around, as I say, needed a air hose to go around 488 since the brakes were not working. Connecting up all the brakes and getting ready to head west. 483 and 492 at Sublette. After some water in the tank of 483, I guess we're ready to proceed. And as you can see, we're pulling actually two dead engines here, so 483 was really making progress on moving equipment west. Approaching Phantom Curve, there's the flat car in the foreground with the tender from engine 462. Rather unusual car. Just been used by the Rio Grande as a water car, I believe. Okay, here we are again at Calico Cut and the Toltec section house, and then again in Chama, and I believe this is the last arrival in Chama for 1970. We're moving equipment around and getting ready for the winter, so just about ready to shut down the railroad for 1970 after 6 weeks of moving equipment. Okay, here is the Chama switcher. Mike Carr has his looks like a Chevy van moving some cars around with a chain in the Chama yard. It looks like he's actually pulling, what, 5 cars there? Isn't that something? I wonder how the brakes
A
would...
high railer, huh?
A high railer, yeah. Just a few final shots around the Chama yards before the railroad is shut down for 1970.
Boy, the yard sure was getting full, wasn't it?
Yeah. We had moved 6 dead engines to Chama and 40 cars over the period of 6 weeks.
Wow.
Got all the smokestacks capped for the winter. Okay, since I'm not afraid of heights, I climbed up to the top of the Chama coal tipple, way up on top looking down, and here's the north end of the yards. And as I recall, all of the Cumbres and Toltec freight cars were moved to the north end of the yard, which is what you see here. And all of the scrappers' cars were moved to the south end. So there's some more views from the top of the coal tipple of Chama in 1970. The pile driver, the Jordan spreader, the derrick, all there on the track on the right. Chama in November 1st, 1970. There, again from the coal tipple looking across, there is Foster's Hotel with the arched front, Rabbit Peak in the background. It hasn't changed too much today, except it appears to be more colorful today than it was then.
A lot of vegetation.
That's true. More trees, more bushes, yeah. Yeah, you can see how I took those pictures from the coal tipple. I guess I got it. Maybe I didn't go all the way to the shaft house. Yeah, well, it wasn't enough to go up in the coal tipple. I had to climb the water tower also. So I went up in the water tower and took some pictures looking south. I figure I should document all of the hard work over the previous 6 weeks. So there it is. I wish I could have been there when it fell. It's held up by some guy wires, as you can see. But I just don't know the details of how it came down. Okay, this is the western end of the Cumbres and Toltec on the west side of Chama. And by now, November 27th. So no more railroad to Durango. It's all gone. End of track. Cumbres and Toltec at the west side of Chama. That's it. Okay, folks, thank you so much.